Then the council said, well, if we're going to be a self-respecting professional society, we've got to have a journal of our own. But they're not a rich society at this point. They're just about, hanging on with their fingernails as far as finance. They said, let's do an electronic journal. So our mandate was put an electronic journal together. So Einder and I went through, and we said, well, we got to have a research journal, because every self-respecting society has a research journal. And then I popped up and said, well, look, there's an awful lot of stuff that a research journal doesn't publish. It doesn't do tutorials. It doesn't do professional interest things. It doesn't do first papers. They want nice, neatly tied up with all the cross correlations and all of that kind of thing done. And there ought to be a place where young people can publish and get things out and learn the business. And the next thing we said is, if we're going to be electronic, we should essentially cut the time that it takes from the time you finish a piece of work to the time it's out. So I said, we're going to do a quick review setup, or at least give people the option that if they don't want the full review, they could get what I call light review, or essentially editorial board review, where a member of the editorial board either says yes or no, unappealable, if they say, or revise, but, and that turned out that 80% of the people who submitted to us wanted light review. They're interested in getting it out. And so we did tutorials, we did panels at ISIS, we did series on specialized topics. I could put a special issue together essentially instantly. For example, there was a set of conversations on IS World on relevance and all sorts of points of view. So I wrote to each of the people and said, I will give you 10 pages in CAIS. If you get me a manuscript by that date, it will be very lightly edited, and I will put them together in a volume. And in 3 months, we had that thing out.
Wow.
The same thing was done when Ben Besat and Smug started talking about artifacts. There were lots of opinions on artifacts. So I went to my editorial board, happened to meet in August after the show. They came in and said, you have 30 days. If you want to submit an article on this topic, you can do so. I got 12 of them. Put them out in special volumes.
No, is it all electronic?
Like electronic
online
journal. Everything's an online journal. And it's got, the downside is that the people say, well, that doesn't really count because it's not a print journal. So that's another issue that
yeah, there's always debates between, well, there's also trade-off between the timing, because IS issues a lot of times very timing. Like if you wait a year to publish, things could change very quickly.
Yeah, in fact, they're sometimes obsolete by the time you get the study done.
Right.
Because if you look at it, it takes roughly 5 years from the time you have found out that there is something out there, which means that you're monitoring it. It takes you a year to do the study, 6 months to write it up. You submit it takes a year to go through review, it takes a year to get published, and usually you have at least one cycle of revision.
Right.
So that's a 4 to 5 year period. So that everything you're reading in MISQ is what was going on 5 years ago. We're publishing history in our journals. My journal essentially published as things were new. And so if you look at communication, you're starting to see things like that, suddenly being told, go look at CAIS.
Like ACM Communications, I think they're pretty fast.
They're pretty good. They're still 2 years from the time they accept to the time they publish. Because Annette Hobart and I did a piece on electronic journals of all things, and it took them 2 years from acceptance to putting it out. So it's not quite as fast as you think it is. They just advertise it as fast.
Yeah.
So anyhow, we started on January 199. By July 1st, we had 20 papers published, so I declared it to be a volume. So we are now publishing 2 volumes. This last year, we published 90 articles in a year. That's a lot of articles.
It seems like you've been pretty busy since you retired. And also that...
And I ran it for 7 years, and people said, 7 years is long enough, and they were right. And so Joey George at Florida State is now taking it over, and it's still publishing a lot of stuff. In fact, the first 6 months of his contents were the things that I already had and which I ran to its conclusion. But I feel very good about having created such a journal because the society really needs that. It needs a place for opportunity where you can put opinion pieces in, where you can say things which may not be quite as neat and tight, but you get them out. And it gives you the opportunity of saying, well, this is what the publication process is. It gets people, graduate students, to be a lot better able to publish and things of this sort. So these are some of the things that are going on. So,
and you also developed the PC museum for a school of IS&T.
yes.
You know, we've seen it all. So maybe
well,
you
the
want
PC Museum
Yeah.
had the following history. Remember I retired, it's now 5 years ago. But when I retired, I knew I was going to be moving to Irvine. We had a second place in Irvine. And my wife preferred Irvine to Claremont because there's a lot less smog there, and it's got a better senior center and things of this sort, which is essentially family reason. And Irvine prices are much worse than Claremont prices. Claremont prices have had enough. But so we decided we were going to sell the house. And the house was one of the condos behind Griswold's, or behind what is now the Doubletree Inn. 2,300 square feet, big place. And we bought a new place. We doubled the size of what we had down there, but still we were losing maybe 1,000 square feet. And I had never thrown any of my PC equipment out. So I told Lorne, who was then chair and dean, why don't we form a museum? There's enough here to get us started. And he said, that's a great idea. And we put notices out on CompuServe and kind of got the word out. And if you look at our current webpage, you'll see how much we have. We have a huge inventory. And it's all sitting in the basement of Bridges Hall. Yeah, there's room down there. Terrible place because it's not air conditioned, it's not heat conditioned. But there are 2 months a year that you can live in it. And then at my retirement party, they named it for me, which is a great honor. And I had said that I would curate this and keep it going and do all the other things. And so that's how that thing came to be.
So,
and all sorts of people contributed to us. We have some really remarkable pieces in here. The current exhibition, if I can skip, the first exhibition essentially took what I thought were the most interesting pieces and put them out. What had happened was that Lorne went out and he raised $90,000 in pledges for the museum.
wow.
Again, it was because of the occasion, my retirement and so on, and people knew about me, so that kind of thing started coming. So we have a nice donors list and thing. But that gave us the funds that we needed to get going, so we can employ an assistant curator, who's a lady who does all these things. We now have a museum major in the history department of all places, which gives us a stream of students coming in because they get experience in running things. So Jennifer Greenwood, who's does that job with me right now, and the first lady we had was, which was Donnelly. She had experience as an assistant curator of a museum, and had also done work as one of the people who dresses up the windows in large department stores. So she knew how to put a display together. So what you see is how we now have artifacts, we have pieces of papers, manuals, things of this sort, so that you get a feel about the computer and the things that go around it. So for example, for the TRS-80 Model 1, we have the original manual that was handed to people. We have some of the original stuff that came with the original PCs, and so on. So we have this huge supply of software. We're going to do a software exhibit one of these days. And we have all of these manuals and things of this sort. Because when people give you the equipment, they give you everything else that they have around it.
Those PCs are like awesome. Sometimes when they study, when they study this building, I just walk around and look at them.
Yeah.
It's really awesome from a year past.
Yeah.
Or new. You
everything you've ever owned and what you've seen your parents have.
Right. Some of them I never seen before in my life ever. So it's really neat.
So, and we're at the 25-year point since the IBM announcement. Maybe the 32-year point since the first Apple. And in the pace at which the PC world has gone, that's history. It really is.